Hello and welcome to the Open Virtual Phone project. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to import a simple asset into Unreal using the Blender bridge. To do that, I need a model to work with. In this case, I've downloaded this chandelier from 3dmodelhaven.com, which is a great Creative Commons Zeroes source library. With that file downloaded, I opened it in Blender and followed the instructions for setting default units, as well as deleted out everything that I didn't need in the project, leaving me with just this chandelier and nothing else, as you can see from my outliner over here. Before I do anything else, I want to make sure that this chandelier has a logical name to work with. So its name is Chandelier 2 on 3dmodelhaven.com, and I went through with the object selected, went to the materials properties, which is the little sphere down here, and selected and renamed each of the materials. So now I have Chandelier 2 bulb, Chandelier 2 metal, and my chandelier. As I'm renaming all of the objects in my file, I also want to double check and make sure that they're using the correct scale factor. To do that, if I select an object and go to the Item tab on the right here, I can see that its external dimensions in the Z direction are 10.8 centimeters, which is too small. So I can either set dimension here, so I can set my Z height to be what it should be, which is 1.08 meters. And then you'll see the other two haven't changed, but I'm going to change those by copying the scale factor into each of them. So now it's X, Y, and Z, all at a scale of 10. If looking at my object, my values in my scale field are not 1, I'm going to select it, hit Control and A, and apply scale. If your object is set up exactly how you want it to be set up, you might consider doing all transforms, because it'll make sure when you import into Unreal, no weird rotational things happen. The last thing I want to do with my object is make sure that its origin point is in a good place. To do that, I can either take my object and move it so that the origin is at world origin, where the green and the red lines intersect with each other. Or, if I go into edit mode on the object by hitting tab, I can make a selection inside of here, for instance that vertex, and in my tools cleanup, there's an origin to selected button. You'll see that little orange dot moves to this new location. That's not very great. I want it in the center of this ring. So I'm going to select all of the vertices across the top of this ring and run that again, and it will center on my current selection. Once I've done that, it's always good to run a purge command, which I do by hitting F3, typing purge, and hitting purge all. If there's anything extra in your model that you need to be worried about, that will get rid of it. With that done, I'm going back to my Tools panel, to my Blender Unreal Bridge, and I'm going to start at the top of this and move down. So first up is Setup, already set to default units, and then I need to start filling out the information on my object. In this case, the import type is an asset. In the next video, we'll go over covering scenes. The asset's name is Chandelier 2 from 3dmodelhaven, and my initials. The asset type is a static mesh, and its asset category is going to be dressing practicals, as this is a small element that you add to a scene that is a practical light. Importantly, I'm not putting it in lights practical, because that's where a blueprint version of this object would go with lights built into it. So with Dressing Practical set up. For my sanity, I like to click Remove Duplicate Materials. In Blender, if you ever see the chandelier 02 bulb.001.002, this will merge any of the .00 etceteras into one. With that done, I'm going to skip the model integrity checks and cleanup. I'll go over those in a more advanced tutorial later, and go straight on to naming conventions. With my setup done, I'm going to make a selection in my scene, in this case the chandelier, or select everything with the A key, and run the mesh naming convention. What that will do is rename all of our meshes to SM underscore asset source underscore the name that it already had inside of Blender, which is why it was important for me to name my chandelier before starting the process. And it will also name the mesh object to the same name, which is important when you send objects to Unreal. With that done, I'm going to click the material naming convention button, which will do the same thing for the materials. In this file, I have personally gone through and also changed all of the texture files that were associated with it. A tool to do texture naming conventions is pending final testing. So with my object selected, got my naming conventions done, the last thing I need to do is export. So before I do that, I'm going to save and click Export for Unreal. That will create a new folder following the correct folder structure as an export folder, wherever you would set in your preferences to send your exports to, with all of the textures inside of it, several files that deal with how materials, textures, and a scene is set up, FBX of all of the objects, and a backup copy of your Blender file that you have open right now. Again, this is for tracking purposes. With that done, I'm going to open my Unreal project, which is OVFP version 1. And back in Blender, I'm going to click the Send command to Unreal. This command will not work if you do not have Unreal open. Once it's done importing, a few important things will happen. One is an ASB object will have been spawned into your scene. Since this is a singular object, we don't care about the assembly, so we can delete that out. And now we can take our object and drag and drop it out into the world and have our nice chandelier. Last thing we want to do is double check our materials and make sure that all the textures are correctly associated with them. In this case, since this material has a subsurface map associated with it, I'm going to change its parent material to swap subsurface and make sure to use this sub C for my subsurface color map. So now, when I move around this object, I get a nice glow through it from light sources. The other material is an emissive material. See, in this case, it automatically set the parent. In this case, I might just want to tune how my emissive and my material looks. With that all done, I save all, and I can use this anywhere in my Unreal project from now on. That's it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to import a more complicated asset with multiple parts.